Greetings, cozy knights. Lower your swords and rest by the fire. Tonight, we journey through the hidden secrets of Oblivion's magical arts. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight, and what games you want me to cover next, and subscribe if this helps you sleep. The block casting exploit. There's a hidden technique that allows you to cast spells almost twice as fast as normal, and most players never discover it. When you block with a weapon or shield raised, the blocking animation cuts off the tail end of your casting animation. This means you can fire off destruction spells at nearly double speed, transforming any mage into a magical machine gun. The trick requires precise timing. You must be actively blocking with an equipped weapon or shield in front of you, not just holding the block button. As you release each spell, the block animation interrupts the normal recovery period. Players who discovered this technique could overwhelm enemies with fireballs before they had time to react. The exploit works with all spell types, from destruction to restoration, making it equally useful for offensive bombardment or rapid healing under pressure. Speedrunners have used this to clear dungeons more efficiently, while others appreciated how it made staff-wielding battle mages feel more dynamic and responsive in combat. The Atronach Telekinesis Loop. The Atronach birth sign grants 50% spell absorption, but prevents natural magicka regeneration, creating what seems like a crippling weakness. However, there's a secret interaction that makes Atronach the most powerful magic birth sign in the game. When you cast telekinesis on yourself, your own spell absorption triggers, converting the magicka cost into absorption. At 100 mysticism skill and 100% spell absorption, casting a telekinesis spell that costs 5 magicka actually returns 25 magicka to your pool. You're generating magicka from nothing, effectively creating infinite magical energy. This transforms the Atronach's supposed weakness into overwhelming strength. Players experimenting with this birth sign found they could create custom spells combining telekinesis with powerful destruction effects, casting them repeatedly without ever depleting their magicka reserves. The technique requires reaching high mysticism skill, but once achieved, it eliminates all resource management concerns. You become an endless wellspring of magical power, limited only by your imagination and spell-crafting creativity. The exploit is so powerful that some consider it game-breaking, while others embrace it as part of the Atronach playstyle. The spell absorption priority system. When an enemy spell flies toward you, Oblivion's engine performs an invisible calculation that most players never understand. The game checks defensive effects in a specific order. First spell absorption, then spell reflection, and finally magic resistance. This priority system creates strategic depth for building defensive characters. If you have 50% spell absorption and 90% spell reflection, half of incoming spells are absorbed immediately for magicka restoration. The remaining spells then have a 90% chance to reflect back at the attacker. Only spells that pass both checks are finally reduced by magic resistance. Understanding this hierarchy allows you to construct godlike defensive combinations. A Breton with their innate 50% magic resistance can stack spell absorption to create a character who either absorbs spells for magicka or resists their damage. However, there's a crucial limitation. Reflected spells cannot be absorbed, even with 100% absorption. If an enemy reflects your spell back at you, your spell absorption won't save you from your own magic. This creates a dangerous interaction where stacking high reflection alongside high absorption doesn't provide double protection, since reflected spells bypass absorption entirely. The chameleon invisibility distinction. Invisibility and Chameleon appear similar, but function completely differently, and understanding the distinction is crucial for stealth builds. Invisibility breaks the moment you perform any action, attacking, casting, activating objects, even opening doors. Chameleon functions as perpetual invisibility that never breaks, allowing you to attack, cast spells, loot containers, and pick locks while remaining undetected. At 100% Chameleon, you achieve God Mode stealth. Guards cannot detect crimes, merchants cannot see you steal, and enemies cannot target you in combat. You can walk up to sleeping NPCs, steal everything they own, and they'll never wake. The only limitations are scripted encounters where NPCs approach and initiate forced dialogue. Even then, they immediately forget you exist after the conversation ends. Creating 100% Chameleon requires 5 equipment pieces enchanted with 20% Chameleon each, typically using sigil stones from Oblivion Gates. Alternatively, you can obtain the Ring of Khajiit from Meridia's quest, which provides 35%, reducing the number of required enchantments. Some players argue that 100% Chameleon makes the game too easy, but for completionists attempting to clear every dungeon and collect every item, it transforms Oblivion into a stress-free treasure hunting experience where you can appreciate the world design without combat interruptions. The weakness stacking devastation. Weakness effects in Oblivion stack multiplicatively, creating an exploit that allows you to deal astronomical damage with even weak spells. The strategy involves creating a custom spell with weakness to an element, followed by damage from that same element. When the spell hits, the weakness is applied first, amplifying the damage portion exponentially. A weakness to fire of 100% doubles all fire damage. Stack multiple weakness effects and the damage multiplies beyond what seems possible. Players who understand the mechanics can create custom spells with 3 or 4 stacked weakness effects, followed by modest fire damage. The result is a spell that costs relatively little magicka, but deals thousands of damage points, potentially one-shotting even powerful enemies. The technique works best with touch spells to guarantee hits, though you must be careful not to include area of effect, as stacking your own weaknesses can make you vulnerable. The mathematical reality is that each weakness doubles the effectiveness of subsequent damage, so even a chain of modest 50% weaknesses creates exponential scaling. 4 weakness effects turn 10 damage into 160 damage. 6 weaknesses turn it into 640. The exploit trivializes combat difficulty, but it also requires significant investment in spell crafting skill and understanding of damage calculations. The Bound Armor Permanence Glitch. Bound equipment spells summon temporary armor and weapons that typically vanish when the spell duration expires. However, there's a glitch that makes bound items permanent and opens up exploit possibilities. Cast a bound armor spell, then let the summoned armor take damage. Before the spell duration expires, repair the damaged armor with a repair hammer. After the spell ends, the repaired bound armor remains in your inventory permanently. These permanent bound items have 0 weight, making them ideal for inventory management. But more importantly, they can be enchanted. Finding a sigil stone from an Oblivion Gate and enchanting permanent bound armor creates equipment with powerful magical effects that weighs nothing. You can stack multiple bound armor pieces, each with different enchantments, creating a character wearing multiple helmets, boots, or gauntlets simultaneously. The exploit becomes especially powerful when enchanting bound items with Chameleon. Since each piece weighs nothing, you can achieve 100% Chameleon without any encumbrance, freeing up carrying capacity for loot. Players experimenting with this glitch discovered that enchanting bound helmets with damage health could create zero-weight tools useful for unconventional approaches. The spell cost reduction formula. Spell costs in Oblivion are calculated using a formula that takes your skill level into account. And understanding this formula reveals how to cast expensive spells for free. The baseline cost is calculated when your skill reaches 33 points. As your skill increases, the cost decreases proportionally. At skill level 100, spell costs are reduced by approximately 67% from baseline. This means that spells which seem prohibitively expensive at lower levels become trivial to cast with mastery. However, there's a further secret. Fortify Intelligence and Fortify Willpower effects not only increase your magicka pool, but also effectively reduce spell costs by giving you more resources to spend. A mage with 300 magicka through Intelligence, Fortification can cast spells that a 100 magicka mage cannot, even if the actual cost hasn't changed. The real exploit comes from creating custom spells with multiple effects. Adding a 1-second Fortify Willpower effect to the beginning of every spell effectively reduces its cost, because willpower governs magicka regeneration. Even more deviously, adding a 1-point absorb magicka effect to combat spells means each hit restores a small amount of magicka, making extended combat encounters self-sustaining. The Sigil Stone Save Scumming. Sigil stones found at the top of Oblivion Towers provide powerful enchantments, but their effects are randomly determined when you grab them. Most players accept whatever enchantment they receive, but knowledgeable mages discovered you can manipulate the results. Save your game while standing in front of the Sigil Stone before touching it. If the enchantment isn't what you want, reload the save and try again. The stone generates a new random enchantment each time you load. This allows you to farm for perfect sigil stones with maximum chameleon, spell reflection, or other desirable effects. The most dedicated enchanters spend hours reloading until they obtain 5 identical 30% chameleon stones to build perfect stealth suits. The technique also works for obtaining specific resistance or fortification effects. Sigil stone quality scales with your level, so waiting until level 17 before closing Oblivion gates guarantees access to the most powerful possible enchantments. Players who understand this mechanic never close gates early, instead marking them on their map and returning when properly leveled. The result is equipment far superior to anything found through normal gameplay, turning patient mages into walking magical fortresses. The staff duplication technique. Staves in Oblivion contain charges that allow you to cast spells without using your own magicka, but recharging staves requires soul gems. There's an exploit that allows you to duplicate charged staves, creating unlimited magical firepower. The duplication glitch requires 2 or more scrolls of the same type. Select a staff from your inventory, then quickly double-click the scrolls while simultaneously throwing a punch. If timed correctly, the staff duplicates, complete with all remaining charges. Since staves with charges have substantial value and magical utility, this exploit provides both wealth and power. Destruction mages duplicate apotheosis or other powerful staves, gaining access to free high-level spells without spending their own magicka. The duplicated staves can be sold for gold, providing easy wealth, or used in combat for sustained magical assault. Some players create entire loadouts of duplicated staves for different situations, pulling out fresh duplicates as charges deplete. The exploit combines with Azura's Star for even greater efficiency. Capture Grand Souls, recharge a powerful staff completely, duplicate it, and you have an arsenal of maximally charged weapons that never run dry. The Alchemy Magic Synergy. Alchemy and magic schools synergize in ways that transform both systems into something far more powerful than either alone. Fortify Intelligence potions not only increase your magicka pool, but also boost spell effectiveness, allowing you to craft more potent spells at the altar of spellmaking. Conversely, Fortify Alchemy spells allow you to create far stronger potions than your base skill would normally permit. The Exploit loop involves creating Fortify Alchemy spells, casting them before crafting potions, then crafting Fortify Intelligence potions using your enhanced alchemy skill. These super potions provide enormous magicka boosts, which you then use to craft even more powerful Fortify Alchemy spells. Each cycle amplifies the next, creating an escalating power spiral. Eventually, you can craft potions that fortify skills by hundreds of points or restore thousands of health. The most extreme exploiters stack Fortify Alchemy enchantments on clothing, wear them while under Fortify Alchemy spell effects, then craft potions that fortify intelligence by thousands, resulting in magicka pools exceeding 10,000 points. With magicka pools that large, you can create and cast spells with multiple simultaneous effects lasting minutes, effectively becoming invincible. The Alchemy Magic feedback loop breaks game balance completely, but experimenting with it reveals the deep interconnections between Oblivion systems. The Drain Intelligence Trap. Drain intelligence effects from traps or enemy spells seem minor, but they create a hidden danger that kills unprepared mages. Intelligence governs your maximum magicka, so when it decreases, your current magicka is also reduced proportionally. If you have 300 magicka and intelligence is drained by 50%, your new maximum becomes 150 and your current magicka drops to 75. Here's the killer secret. If your maximum magicka drops below your current spell cost, you become unable to cast spells. Imagine entering a dungeon at full magicka, getting hit by drain intelligence from a trap, then discovering you cannot cast healing or defensive spells because your intelligence has been devastated. You're stuck in a dungeon, unable to fight or escape using magic. The solution is carrying Restore Intelligence potions, or knowing the locations of chapel altars where all negative effects are removed. Underprepared mages who venture into necromancer lairs without intelligence restoration options often find themselves helplessly watching their magicka pool shrink to nothing, unable to defend themselves against undead hordes. The danger is compounded by the fact that multiple drain intelligence effects stack, and necromancers specifically use these spells. 4 necromancers simultaneously draining intelligence can reduce a master wizard to a helpless civilian in seconds. The Spell Reflection feedback loop. Spell reflection bounces hostile magic back at the caster. But what happens when 2 characters with spell reflection fight? The answer creates one of Oblivion's strangest magical phenomena. When a spell is reflected, it returns to the original caster. If that caster also has reflection, the spell bounces back again. This ping-pong effect continues until someone's reflection chance fails, at which point the spell finally lands. In practice, this creates situations where you cast a fireball at a lich with 50% reflection. It bounces back at you. Your 75% reflection sends it back to the lich. It bounces again. And this continues invisibly until the reflection checks resolve. The combat log doesn't show these internal bounces, but the eventual damage is applied to whoever lost the reflection lottery. The feedback loop becomes dangerous when you have high spell reflection and use powerful destruction spells. Your own 200 damage fireball might eventually reflect back and hit you for full damage after multiple bounces. The only way to guarantee safety is achieving exactly 100% spell reflection, which ensures all enemy spells reflect exactly once and never return. Anything less than 100% creates risk, and anything more than 100% is wasted. The mechanic punishes players who misunderstand how reflection works, but rewards those who build their characters with mathematical precision. The water-walking combat exploit. Water-walking spells seem like pure utility, useful for crossing rivers without swimming. But clever mages discovered they provide a massive combat advantage. Casting water-walking allows you to stand on water surfaces, while enemies without the effect must swim. Swimming reduces movement speed, prevents jumping, and limits combat effectiveness. You can kite melee enemies indefinitely by standing on water, forcing them to swim helplessly while you rain destruction spells on their heads. They can never reach you, and water creates a barrier between you and danger. The exploit works in Oblivion plains where lava flows are common. Cast water, walking on lava surfaces, which the game treats identically to water, and you can walk on molten rock while enemies burn and die attempting to reach you. Daedra, who typically overwhelm players with numbers, become trivial when you position yourself on elevated lava surfaces, unreachable and safe. The only enemies immune to this tactic are casters who can attack from range, but even they suffer accuracy penalties while swimming. Master mages carry constant effect water-walking enchantments specifically for combat advantages, transforming lakes and rivers into fortified positions where victory is guaranteed. The Soul Gem Hierarchy Secret. Soul gems trap souls for enchanting and recharging, but the gem hierarchy contains hidden mechanics that affect gameplay efficiency. Gems range from petty to grand, with each tier trapping progressively stronger souls. Here's the secret. Attempting to trap a soul uses the smallest gem capable of holding it, not the largest. If you have petty, lesser, and grand soul gems in inventory and trap a petty soul, the game uses your petty gem. This automatic selection seems convenient, but creates inventory management challenges. Carrying only grand gems means petty creature souls trapped during exploration waste valuable gems. The solution is understanding soul sizes and managing gem inventory deliberately. Rat-like creatures provide petty souls, wolves provide lesser souls, trolls provide common souls, and humanoids provide grand souls with the help of black soul gems. Experienced mages carry an assortment of gem sizes and avoid casting soul trap on weak creatures unless appropriate gems are available. The most efficient approach is clearing your inventory of smaller gems before entering dungeons, where powerful creatures dwell, ensuring grand souls automatically fill grand gems. This attention to soul management separates master enchanters who always have charged equipment from novices who waste resources on inappropriate targets. The Necromancer's Moon Revelation. The Necromancer's Moon quest reveals how to create black soul gems, items capable of trapping human souls for powerful enchantments. The process requires placing empty grand soul gems on specific necromantic altars during new moon phases when the shade of the Revenant is visible in the night sky. Most players complete the quest and never think about it again, but the revelation has lasting implications. You now possess the knowledge to create black soul gems indefinitely, which means unlimited access to grand level souls without hunting dangerous creatures. Bandits provide grand souls, and Cyrodiil is full of bandits. The moral implications are intentionally dark. You're trapping human souls for magical power, which Hannibal Trevin banned from the Mages Guild for ethical reasons. The game allows you to become exactly what the guild opposes. Creating black soul gems requires planning, as you must wait for proper moon phases and travel to necromantic altars in specific locations. However, once you establish a creation routine, you gain unlimited enchanting power. Many players never realize they can continue making black soul gems after the quest ends, missing out on easy access to maximum strength enchantments. The Fortify skill. Enchanting exploit. Enchanting items with Fortify skill effects creates permanent stat boosts that stack with spells and potions. But there's a hidden exploit in how skill checks work. When you enchant clothing with Fortify Destruction, Fortify Illusion, or other magic skill effects, the game treats your skill as actually being higher for cost calculations. A destruction skill of 50, wearing plus 125, Fortified Destruction items has an effective skill of 75, reducing spell cost significantly. But here's the exploit. Skill level locked spells and perks check your natural skill, not your effective skill. This means you can wear Fortify gear to reduce costs, while still training your natural skills through use. More deviously, if you enchant all your clothing with Fortify magic skills, casting spells becomes nearly free, despite having low natural skills. A character with 25 natural destruction skill, wearing about 175 Fortified Destruction gear, casts journeyman spells at master skill costs, trivializing magicka management. The most extreme application involves Fortify Armorer enchantments. Create a spell that temporarily boosts Armorer to 100, cast it, and repair all your equipment without breaking hammers. Because at 100 Armorer skill, repair hammers never break. The spell only needs to last seconds, just long enough to open your inventory and repair everything. This saves thousands of gold on repair costs throughout a playthrough. The Magic Trap Immunity Gap. Spell Reflection protects against hostile spells cast by enemies, but it doesn't work on environmental magic traps. Fire jets in Oblivion Gates, electric shock traps in Ayleid Ruins, and magical damage from activated switches all ignore spell reflection completely. This creates a vulnerability gap that kills mages who build their defense around reflection. You can have 100% reflection, walk confidently through a Daedric shrine, and die to fire traps because your defensive build is useless against environmental hazards. The solution is stacking resist fire, resist frost, and resist shock effects to handle elemental traps, or using resist magic to cover all magical damage sources. Resist magic works against everything: spells, traps, environmental effects, and even some disease effects. It's the true defensive foundation, while spell reflection is supplementary offense disguised as defense. Experienced dungeon delvers never rely solely on reflection. They build layered defenses using resistance effects as their base, adding reflection on top for style points and offensive utility. Understanding this distinction prevents embarrassing deaths to environmental damage, while boasting god-tier defensive stats. The Enchanting Altar Intelligence. Scaling. Enchanting effectiveness at the Altar of Enchantment scales with your intelligence attribute, and the scaling is more dramatic than most players realize. At 50 intelligence, enchantments have baseline power. At 100 intelligence, enchantments are approximately twice as powerful. This means temporarily boosting intelligence before enchanting creates permanently stronger items. Drink Fortify Intelligence potions before using Sigil Stones or the Altar of Enchantment, and the resulting enchantments will be significantly more potent. A Sigil Stone that normally provides 20% Chameleon might provide 26 or even 30% if applied while under Intelligence Fortification. The strategy requires preparation, stocking intelligence-boosting potions and timing their use before enchanting sessions. However, the permanent benefits are substantial. Over time, enchanting at boosted intelligence creates a full equipment set with dramatically higher stats than natural enchanting would provide. The most dedicated min-maxers combine intelligence potions with fortify intelligence spells, achieving intelligence values above 200 before enchanting. Their equipment becomes so powerful that it trivializes entire aspects of the game. This hidden scaling mechanic rewards players who understand that temporary bonuses during enchanting create permanent advantages. The spellcrafting exploit duration. When creating custom spells at the altar of spellmaking, duration affects magicka cost proportionally. A spell lasting 1 second is cheap, while a spell lasting 60 seconds is expensive. However, many effects don't benefit from duration because their impact is instantaneous, or because combat encounters end quickly. Damage spells, for example, deal their damage immediately. Duration only matters for ongoing effects like fortify, attributes, invisibility, or light spells. The exploit is creating minimum duration spells with effects that don't need duration, drastically reducing magicka costs. A weakness to fire effect only needs to last 1 second if the fire damage effect follows immediately after in the same spell. The weakness applies, then damage is calculated, and the target dies. No need for 30-second durations that triple the casting cost. Even better, many utility spells can be cast at 1 second duration repeatedly, rather than maintaining long duration versions. Need light in a dungeon? Cast 1 second light for 5 magicka every few seconds, instead of 60-second light for 50 magicka. You save overall magicka, while maintaining flexibility to stop and restart as needed. This micro-optimization makes spell crafting dramatically more efficient, allowing lower-level mages to cast effects they otherwise couldn't afford. The summon duration misconception. Summoned creatures persist for their spell duration or until they die, and most players assume longer durations are always better. However, there's a hidden mechanic that makes short duration summoning more efficient. When you summon a creature, it appears with full health regardless of duration. A 10-second summon costs less magicka than a 60-second summon, but the creature is equally durable. If combat ends quickly, long durations are wasted. The efficient strategy is summoning cheap, short-duration creatures repeatedly as needed, rather than maintaining expensive long-duration summons. A scamp summoned for 15 seconds costs minimal magicka and serves perfectly as a distraction or damage dealer for most encounters. If it dies before the timer expires, you lost less magicka than if you'd summoned a 60-second version that also died early. The true master move is creating minimum duration summon spells for combat and keeping them separated from exploration utility summons. Need a distraction for a difficult fight? Summon a 10-second Daedroth, exploring and want continuous companionship. Then use a longer duration summon. Contextual spell selection saves magicka pools, allowing sustained adventuring without constant retreats to rest and regenerate. The staff charge efficiency. Staves cast spells using internal charges rather than your magicka, making them essential for mages with limited magicka pools or during extended delves where regeneration opportunities are scarce. However, staves have hidden efficiency mechanics. The charges consumed per casting depend on the staff's base spell power. A weak staff casting minor fireball uses charges slowly, while powerful staves casting devastating effects deplete rapidly. The secret is that multiple casts of a cheap staff often deal more total damage before depletion than single casts of an expensive staff. A minor fireball staff with 60 charges casting 20 damage fireballs deals 1,200 total damage before depleting. A major fireball staff with 30 charges casting 50 damage fireballs deals only 1,500 total damage. The major staff is only 25% better despite costing twice the soul gems to recharge. For efficient dungeon clearing, carrying multiple cheap staves provides more sustained magical output than a single powerful staff. You can also intentionally seek staffs with area of effect spells, as hitting multiple enemies with one charge multiplies effectiveness geometrically. The most efficient staff users never rely on individual powerful items, but instead maintain an arsenal of task-specific staves optimized for charge to damage ratios. The destruction weakness sequence. When designing custom destruction spells, the order of effects matters far more than most players realize. Effects are applied sequentially from top to bottom in the spell's effect list. This means placing weakness effects before damage effects is mandatory for the weakness to actually increase damage. If you create a spell with fire damage followed by weakness to fire, the damage is calculated before the weakness applies, making the weakness effect useless. The correct sequence is weakness to fire, then fire damage. However, there's a deeper optimization. Stacking multiple weakness effects before any damage creates exponential scaling. As each weakness amplifies all subsequent effects, the ultimate destruction spell begins with 3 or 4 weakness to element effects, each compounding on the previous one, followed by relatively modest damage. This sequence turns 20 points of damage into 300 points or more, while keeping the spell's magicka cost surprisingly low, because modest damage numbers are cheap. The effect order secret extends to all spell schools. Fortify effects should come first in buff spells. Dispel effects should come first in anti-magic spells. And calm effects should precede frenzy for mind control applications. Understanding sequential effect application transforms spellcrafting from guesswork into precise engineering, creating perfectly optimized spells that perform far better than equal cost random combinations. The light spell combat disadvantage. Light spells seem purely beneficial, illuminating dark dungeons to improve visibility. However, carrying a lit spell creates a hidden combat disadvantage. Stealth in Oblivion is affected by ambient light, and casting light on yourself dramatically increases your visibility to enemies. Sneaking becomes nearly impossible while glowing, as the light radius makes you detectable at much greater distances. Worse, Night Eye spells provide identical visibility improvements without emitting light that makes you detectable. For characters investing in stealth alongside magic, Night Eye is strictly superior to light. The visibility disadvantage extends to combat encounters. Enemies use line-of-sight checks to detect targets, and emitting light helps them acquire you faster in dark environments. Darkness that protects you by hiding your position is negated by light spells, turning environmental advantage into disadvantage. The optimal solution is enchanting an item with Night Eye effect and wearing it constantly for permanent vision enhancement without detection penalties. If Night Eye isn't available, carrying torches is actually superior to light spells, because torches can be dropped instantly when stealth is needed, while spell effects must expire naturally. Understanding light mechanics prevents players from sabotaging their own stealth capabilities while exploring Oblivion's many dark locations. The summon limit exploits. You can only maintain one summon at a time normally, as casting a new summon spell despawns the previous creature. However, there's an exploit that allows multiple simultaneous summons by using staves instead of spells. Staves operate under different rules than spellcasting. Summoning a creature with a staff doesn't despawn creatures summoned by other staves or by spells. You can cast a summon spell, then use a summon staff, creating 2 simultaneous creatures. Use multiple different summon staves, and you can build an entire army. The limitation is obtaining multiple summon staves with different creature types. But Mages Guild halls and Necromancer loot often provide several options. A fully equipped summoner carrying 3 different summon staves can deploy 4 creatures simultaneously, 1 from a spell and 3 from staves, overwhelming enemies through numerical superiority. The army summon strategy becomes especially powerful when combined with duration management. Summon durable creatures like Dremora Lords from spells for long-term tanking. Then supplement with short-duration staff summons as disposable damage dealers. Enemies prioritize the closest target, so layering summons creates expendable buffer forces while you cast safely from distance. Master summoners become generals commanding Daedric armies, never directly engaging in combat. Instead, directing forces from safe positions. The Cure Disease. Blessing Secret. Chapel altars cure all negative effects when activated, provided your fame exceeds your infamy. This seems like a convenient heal mechanic, but there's a hidden consequence that surprised players discover too late. Altars cure diseases, but they also dispel beneficial spell effects you've applied to yourself. If you're wearing custom buff spells when you pray, they vanish, wasting the magicka you spent casting them. The shock comes from activating an altar after painstakingly casting multiple long-duration fortify spells, then watching hundreds of magicka worth of buffs evaporate. Worse, altars dispel effects from equipped enchanted items temporarily. If you're wearing items with constant effects, those effects suspend for several seconds after altar use. The workaround is timing altar visits carefully. Only pray when you have negative effects to cure and no active buffs to lose. Alternatively, carry cure disease potions instead of relying on altars, preserving your spell effects. For evil characters with high infamy, altars don't work at all, forcing reliance on potions or the Shrine of Sithis in the Vile Lair. Understanding altar mechanics prevents wasted magicka and frustrating buff losses, allowing you to use them tactically rather than casually. Master mages track their buff timers and altar visits carefully, maximizing uptime on fortifications while staying healthy. The Command Humanoid exploit. Command spells temporarily turn hostile targets friendly, forcing them to fight for you. Most players use command on tough enemies to create temporary allies during difficult fights. However, command has a hidden synergy with Soul Trap that creates an ethical shortcut for necromantic enchanting. Cast Command Humanoid on a hostile human target, turning them friendly. Immediately cast Soul Trap followed by lethal damage. When they die, their soul is trapped in your Black Soul Gem. But because they died while commanded, no bounty is incurred. You've murdered them legally from the game's perspective. This allows mages to farm human souls for enchanting without becoming criminals or fighting guards. Bandits become disposable soul batteries, commanded and harvested in isolated locations. The process is morally reprehensible from a role-playing perspective, but mechanically efficient for power gaming. Alternatively, command can be used to make enemies kill each other, avoiding direct combat entirely. Command the strongest enemy in a group, let them damage their former allies, then kill the commanded target once their former friends are weakened or dead. It's a control mage playstyle that turns enemy strength against itself, allowing physically weak mages to defeat encounters far above their level through tactical manipulation. The resist disease vampirism. Prevention. Vampirism in Oblivion is contracted as a disease called porphyric hemophilia, caught from vampire attacks. If not cured within 3 days, the disease progresses into full vampirism, permanently altering your character with both benefits and severe drawbacks. Most players who become vampires do so accidentally, not realizing they were infected until it's too late. However, resist disease effects prevent infection entirely. A simple 100% resist disease enchantment on any equipment piece makes you immune to porphyric hemophilia, completely preventing vampirism. This allows you to farm vampire lairs for loot without risk of infection, clearing necromancer strongholds full of vampires worry-free. The alternative is carrying cure disease potions and checking your active effects menu religiously after each vampire encounter. But this requires constant vigilance. Master mages who understand disease mechanics always maintain resist disease coverage, either through enchantments or constant effect spells. The investment of a single enchantment slot prevents the massive inconvenience of vampirism's sun damage and reputation penalties. For players who want to experience vampirism intentionally, they can remove the resist disease item, allow infection, and embrace undeath on their own terms. Knowing disease prevention mechanics gives you control over your character's fate, rather than leaving it to RNG infection chance from random encounters. The Fire Shield damage reflection, Elemental Shield spells, Fire Shield, Frost Shield, Shock Shield, reflect elemental damage back at attackers, but their mechanics are more complex than tooltips suggest. When an enemy hits you with a melee attack while you have Fire Shield active, they take fire damage in return. However, the damage they take is calculated separately from any defensive effects you have. This means you can stack Fire Shield with high armor rating or reflect damage for layered punishment. Every enemy who attacks you takes shield damage, reflect damage, and you still mitigate their incoming damage through armor or magic resistance. Fire shields effectively give melee attackers a reason to fear close combat with you, as each swing damages them. The strategic application is casting shields before engaging groups of melee enemies, allowing them to damage themselves through sustained attacks. Elementally weak enemies take even more damage, as shields benefit from enemy weaknesses just like your attack spells do. A fire shield against Frost Atronachs deals massive damage because Frost Atronachs are weak to fire. The shields also work on arrow attacks, reflecting damage to archers who shoot you. Patient tacticians cast shields and simply wait, letting aggressive enemies kill themselves through repeated attacks, conserving magicka for healing and finishing blows, rather than sustained offense. The Mysticism School's hidden utility. Mysticism is often overlooked as a utilitarian school with spells like Detect Life and Telekinesis, but it contains some of the most powerful effects in the game. Reflect damage and absorb health are mysticism effects, providing both defense and sustain. Soul Trap for enchanting preparation is mysticism. Spell absorption, arguably the best defensive effect, is mysticism. Dispel for removing beneficial effects from enemies is mysticism. The school lacks the obvious flashy appeal of destruction or the straightforward healing of restoration, but it provides the foundation for advanced magical builds. The Detect Life effect alone is worth mastering mysticism. It outlines all nearby creatures through walls and darkness, providing perfect situational awareness. Dungeon delving becomes dramatically safer when you know exactly where every enemy is before entering rooms. Combining Detect Life with Chameleon allows you to avoid encounters entirely, ghosting through dungeons and stealing valuable loot without fighting. Mysticism's reputation as a weak school comes from players who never experiment with its effects. Those who do discover synergies that enable god-tier builds, like Atronach Birthsign characters using Soul Trap and Spell Absorption to become immortal Magicka engines. The Paralyze exploit mechanics. Paralyze effects freeze enemies completely, preventing movement and actions while they remain helpless. The effect seems powerful, but balanced by high Magicka costs and brief durations. However, paralyzed enemies also cannot defend themselves, turning them into stationary targets for follow-up attacks. This creates an exploit with touch range weapons. Cast Paralyze on touch, immediately switch to a weapon, and unleash a full combo while they're frozen. They cannot block, dodge, or counter-attack. The damage output is obscene because every strike lands perfectly. Weakness effects compound this further. Cast Weakness to Magicka, then Paralyze, and the paralysis duration increases because the weakness retroactively affects the paralyzed spell's effectiveness. Stack weakness properly, and you can paralyze enemies for absurd durations, leaving them helpless on the ground, while you methodically eliminate their companions or simply walk away, letting them wake confused and alone. The most devastating application is Paralyze enchantments on weapons. Each strike has a chance to paralyze, creating self-reinforcing offense where successful attacks prevent retaliation, allowing further attacks. Enemies crumple repeatedly, standing only to be paralyzed again, never getting an action before death. The enchantment charge management. Enchanted items have limited charges that deplete with use, requiring recharging with soul gems. However, different enchantments drain charges at different rates. Constant effect enchantments never deplete, while cast-on-use enchantments vary wildly in efficiency. Understanding charge consumption allows optimizing equipment for extended use. Low-magnitude enchantments use fewer charges per activation than high-magnitude ones. An item enchanted with 5-point fire damage might cast 30 times before depleting, while 30-point fire damage might only cast 10 times. 4. Regular use during exploration. Low-magnitude enchantments provide more total casts before requiring recharges, reducing soul gem consumption. The exploit is creating multiple identical items with stacked low-magnitude enchantments, rather than one item with a single high-magnitude enchantment. 5 rings each with 5-point fire damage effectively grant 25-point fire damage total, while benefiting from 5 times the charge capacity. They'll last dramatically longer than a single 25-point ring. This multiplication doesn't work for all enchantment types, but for those where it does, it creates massive efficiency gains. Experienced enchanters maintain libraries of equipment with varied magnitudes and types, selecting optimal pieces for each situation, conserving soul gems through strategic item rotation rather than brute forcing powerful effects. The training exploit with custom spells. Magic skills increase through successful spell casting, with skill gains proportional to Magicka spent. The original Oblivion encouraged spam casting weak spells to grind skills quickly. However, Oblivion Remastered changed the system so that higher cost spells provide faster skill growth per cast. This creates an exploit loop for power leveling magic skills. Create expensive custom spells that cost nearly your entire Magicka pool. Cast the spell once, draining your Magicka completely, then wait 1 hour to fully regenerate. Cast again. Each full cost cast grants massive skill increases, leveling magic skills from novice to master in minutes rather than hours of repetitive weak spell spam. The strategy works best with harmless spells that can be cast on yourself or in safe locations. Create fortify skill spells with maximum magnitude and duration, making them prohibitively expensive. Cast them in town, rest, repeat. Your magic skills skyrocket while your character gains tangible benefits from the fortifications, creating a productive training loop. Combined with alchemy for Magicka potions or Atronak birth signs telekinesis, exploit for infinite magicka. You can power level entire magic schools to 100 before leaving the first town, creating overpowered mages who trivialize content from the start. The Conjuration Permanent Effect bug. Bound armor and weapons are supposed to vanish when their spell duration expires, but there's a bug that makes their enchantments permanent under specific conditions. This is separate from the bound armor repair glitch. If you equip bound armor, allow it to despawn naturally, then equip regular armor in the same slot. Sometimes the bound armor's enchantments persist, even after the physical armor vanishes. You're wearing normal iron armor, but receiving the statistical benefits of bound armor enchantments permanently. The bug is unpredictable and difficult to reproduce consistently, but when it triggers, it provides permanent stat boosts for zero ongoing cost. The most common scenario involves bound boots or gauntlets. Summon them, let them despawn, then immediately equip regular boots or gauntlets from inventory. If the bug triggers, you gain permanent fortifications without occupying the armor slot visually. This allows stacking the bugged enchantments with regular enchantments on physically worn gear, effectively doubling your available enchantment slots. The bug breaks game balance significantly, but it's rare enough that most players never encounter it naturally. Speedrunners and exploiters purposely trigger it through specific equipment swapping sequences, gaining massive power spikes early in runs. The resist magic cap myth. Many players believe resist magic caps at 85% like physical armor's damage reduction, but this is incorrect. Resist magic has no cap and can reach 100%, providing complete immunity to all magical damage. Achieving 100% requires stacking multiple sources. Bretons start with 50% racial resistance. Add the mundane rings 50% from the main quest, and you're already at 100% immunity to all magic. Alternatively, combine Breton resistance with custom enchantments and you achieve godhood without needing quest rewards. At 100% resist magic, all hostile spells deal 0 damage. Leeches, mages, Daedra, none can harm you with magic. Physical damage becomes your only vulnerability, which armor addresses. The misconception about the 85% cap comes from physical armor's hard cap, which players assume applies to magical resistance as well. It doesn't. Magical resistance stacks freely to 100% and beyond, though exceeding 100 is wasteful. Understanding the true mechanics allows building characters with perfect magical immunity through deliberate gear and race selection, eliminating half of all damage types from threatening you. Combined with high physical armor, you become effectively invincible, relegating combat to tedium rather than challenge. The Spell Tome Advantage. Spell tomes are items introduced in official downloadable content that teach spells instantly when read, bypassing the need to purchase from merchants or trainers. Most players treat them as convenient alternatives to gold-based learning. However, spell tomes ignore the usual skill requirements for learning spells. Normally, you cannot purchase journeyman-level spells without reaching 25 skill in the relevant school. Tomes have no such restriction. Find an expert-level spell tome at level 1 with 0 skill investment, Read it, and you instantly know a spell you shouldn't be able to cast for dozens of levels. The tome doesn't check prerequisites, it just grants knowledge. This creates a shortcut for acquiring powerful spells far earlier than intended. The limitation is finding tomes, as they're rare loot drops, but necromancers frequently carry destruction and conjuration tomes. Farm necromancer lairs specifically hunting for tomes, and you can learn master-level magic before leaving the starting sewers if you're persistent enough. The tome bypass allows hybrid characters who don't invest heavily in magic skills to still access useful spells, making magic more accessible to warriors and thieves who want supplemental magical utility without skill point investment. The Fortify Health Permanent Buff Trap. Fortify health spells temporarily increase maximum health and current health proportionally. Cast 100-point Fortify Health, and your maximum increases by 100 while your current health also rises by 100. However, when the effect expires, only the maximum decreases. The current health decrease doesn't kill you. This creates an exploit for pre-buffing before dangerous encounters. Cast Fortify Health to enormous magnitudes, then deliberately damage yourself down to a sliver of apparent health. When Fortify Health expires, your new lower maximum appears to put you near death, but you're actually at full relative health. Enemies and players see you at critical health and often ignore you, focusing on more threatening targets. Alternatively, you can stack Fortify Health before entering combat, artificially inflating your survivability. Then, when it expires mid-fight, you don't die immediately. Your current health scales down proportionally. The trap comes when players don't understand the mechanic. They cast Fortify Health, take massive damage while buffed, then the buff expires and their current health doesn't exceed their new lower maximum, leaving them at precariously low health they don't anticipate. Understanding how current and maximum health interact prevents this trap while enabling tactical applications. The shock damage secret synergy. Shock damage in Oblivion doesn't just damage health, it also damages magicka simultaneously. Each point of shock damage deals 1 point of health damage and a fraction of magicka damage. This makes shock the most effective element for fighting mages, as it attacks their spellcasting resource directly. A mage, hit by powerful shock, spells loses the ability to cast before dying, neutralized as a threat. Most players never realize shock damages magicka because the mechanic is never explicitly explained. They choose fire for damage over time or frost for slowing enemies, never understanding that shock is the anti-mage element. In practice, this makes shock damage spells ideal for PvP scenarios against mage NPCs or enemy spellcasters. Manamako, leeches, necromancers, all are especially vulnerable to shock, not because of elemental weakness, but because shock attacks their primary resource. Combined with weakness to shock, you can drain a lich's entire magicka pool with 1 or 2 casts, leaving them defenseless and unable to summon backup or cast healing. The synergy extends to silent spells, which prevent spellcasting entirely. Cast weakness to shock, then silence, then sustain shock damage, and mages become completely ineffective before dying helplessly, unable to retaliate with their primary skill set. The invisibility breaking rules. Invisibility spells hide you completely until you perform an action that breaks the effect. Most actions break invisibility: attacking, casting spells, activating objects. However, some actions don't break invisibility, and understanding which is which creates powerful infiltration strategies. You can loot containers while invisible without breaking the effect. This means entering a building while invisible, stealing everything valuable, and leaving without ever being detected is possible. Pickpocketing breaks invisibility only if you're caught, so with high sneak skill, you can pickpocket entire inventories while invisible and never be seen. The most useful non-breaking action is movement. While invisible, you can position yourself perfectly before attacking, setting up optimal ambushes. Enemies cannot detect invisible movement, allowing you to walk past guards, bypass locked doors by positioning near them, and wait for NPCs to unlock them, then follow through or simply observe enemy patrol patterns without risk. The invisibility mechanics create a stealth mage playstyle distinct from traditional sneaking. Rather than crouching and moving slowly, you cast invisibility and walk normally through restricted areas, only breaking the spell when absolutely necessary, then immediately recasting. High illusion skill and efficient spell crafting allow sustained invisibility sneaking that's more effective than pure stealth builds. The Fortify Magicka regeneration myth. Many players assume Fortify Magicka increases regeneration rate, but in reality, it only increases maximum Magicka pool size. Regeneration speed is fixed. A larger pool simply means more total Magicka before emptying. This misunderstanding leads players to create inefficient Fortify Magicka spells, expecting improved sustain, when what they really need is spell absorption, or Magicka efficient casting. True regeneration improvement comes from willpower attribute, which governs the rate at which Magicka refills. Fortify willpower effects genuinely speed regeneration, making them more valuable than Fortify Magicka for sustained focus builds. The optimal caster invests in both high intelligence for large Magicka pools and high willpower for fast regeneration, creating a deep well that refills quickly. Alternatively, Atronach birth sign characters ignore regeneration entirely, relying on spell absorption to refill through combat. The myth persists because players see their Magicka bar filling in absolute numbers and assume percentage-based thinking, not realizing that 300 Magicka regenerating at the base rate takes the same time proportionally as 100 Magicka regenerating at the base rate. Understanding actual regeneration mechanics prevents wasted enchantment and spell slots on ineffective Fortify Magicka effects, when Fortify willpower would serve better. The Conjuration Illusion Synergy. Summoned creatures naturally aggro enemies, drawing attention away from you. This seems obvious, but combining summons with illusion spells creates incredibly powerful control strategies. Cast Calm or Frenzy on your own summon, and strange things happen. Calming your summon makes it non-hostile to enemies, causing enemies to ignore it while it still follows you peacefully. Cast Frenzy on your summon, and it attacks everything indiscriminately, including other summoned creatures you spawn afterward. This allows creating chaotic combat scenarios where multiple summoned creatures fight each other while you watch safely from distance. The true synergy is Command Creature. Command an enemy, making it friendly temporarily, then summon your own creature. Your summon and the commanded enemy both fight for you. When command expires, the former enemy becomes hostile again, but your summon is already engaged with it, creating automatic combat while you retreat. Chain commanding different enemies as previous commands expire, constantly cycling through temporary allies who fight your summoned permanent allies, and you never directly engage in combat, managing battles like a puppeteer. The Conjuration Illusion combination allows pacifist playthroughs where you complete combat encounters without personally dealing damage, instead manipulating friend and foe relationships to make enemies destroy themselves. The damage over time. Misunderstanding. Fire damage in Oblivion doesn't naturally cause damage over time like many RPGs. Instead, spell duration determines how long the damage effect persists. A 10-point fire damage spell with 5-second duration deals 10 damage per second for 5 seconds, totaling 50 damage. Players often misunderstand this, thinking longer durations extend burning effects aesthetically. In reality, longer durations multiply total damage, while increasing magicka cost proportionally. The confusion arises because visual fire effects persist for several seconds after casting, giving the illusion of lasting damage when the actual damage is front-loaded. The spell cost formula heavily penalizes duration, making long-duration damage spells extremely expensive. Efficient casters use 1-second duration damage spells to minimize cost, dealing damage in one burst rather than spreading it over time. The only advantage of sustained damage duration is disrupting enemy actions through continuous pain animation, preventing them from casting spells or performing actions. However, this is unreliable because enemies can still act between damage ticks. For pure damage efficiency, 1-second burst spells provide the best damage per magicka ratio, allowing rapid-fire casting that overwhelms enemies through volume rather than sustained pressure. The weakness amplification stacking. Weakness effects amplify other effects, but multiple weakness effects compound multiplicatively, not additively. This creates exponential damage scaling that seems impossible. 100% weakness to fire doubles fire damage. 100%. Weakness to fire effects don't make damage 300%. They make it 400% because the second weakness doubles the already doubled damage. 3 100% weaknesses result in 800% damage. 4 create 1600%. The exponential growth means even modest weakness values create absurd results when stacked. The exploit is creating spells with multiple weakness effects, each magnifying the next. A spell with 3 50% weakness to fire effects, followed by 10-point fire damage, deals 33 points effective damage. Not impressive alone, but cheap enough to cast repeatedly. Increase the weakness magnitudes, and the scaling becomes grotesque. 300% weaknesses followed by 50-point damage deals 400 total damage, while costing less than a straightforward 400-point damage spell would. The magicka efficiency is staggering. Master enchanters discovered the same scaling applies to weaknesses from enchanted items. Wearing items that cause weakness to fire on strike, then attacking with fire enchanted weapons creates multiplicative damage that one-shots anything. Understanding exponential stacking separates novice mages dealing moderate damage from grandmasters erasing enemies with mathematically optimized devastation. The calm spell exploitation. Calm effects pacify hostile enemies temporarily, making them non-aggressive. Most players use calm for crowd control or avoiding fights. However, calm has a hidden synergy with stealth for assassination setups. Cast calm on an enemy, making them passive, then sneak attack them for critical damage. They don't fight back during the calm duration, allowing you to land multiple sneak attacks in sequence. By the time calm expires, they're already dead or critically wounded, never having raised their weapon. This transforms calm from defensive utility into offensive assassination tool. The best application is casting area of effect calm on entire enemy groups, then methodically executing each one with sneak attacks while the rest stand placidly watching. They don't assist their companions because calm suppresses threat perception. You're murdering them one by one in front of their friends, and they don't care until calm expires. The exploit works because calm's threat suppression is absolute during its duration. enemies don't register damage as hostile action requiring response. Combined with one-shot kill weapons or spells, you can clear entire dungeons without legitimate combat, instead pacifying and assassinating systematically. The strategy breaks immersion, but works perfectly within game mechanics. The Turn Undead hidden power. Turn Undead effects cause undead enemies to flee in terror, removing them from combat temporarily. Most players use it for breathing room when overwhelmed by zombies or skeletons. However, Turn Undead has a hidden interaction with level scaling. If the Turn Undead magnitude exceeds the target's level significantly, instead of fleeing, they're instantly destroyed, crumbling to ash. This makes Turn Undead a one-shot kill spell against weak undead. The threshold is unclear and varies by enemy type, but generally, 30+ magnitude Turn Undead destroys most basic undead instantly, while 50+ magnitude affects tougher variants. The spell becomes instant delete button for undead dungeons, allowing pure mages to clear necromancer lairs rapidly without sustained combat. Cast high magnitude Turn Undead, watch skeletons explode into ash piles, move forward, repeat. The efficiency outpaces methodical destruction magic combat, because you're not whittling health bars, you're executing instant kills. The hidden power is that Turn Undead scales better than destruction against undead specifically, making it superior choice for players who know they're entering undead-heavy areas. Combining Turn Undead with Area of Effect application lets you clear entire rooms with one cast. The spell's reputation as utility rather than damage is misplaced. Against proper targets, it's the most efficient nuke available. The Burden spell encumbrance. Exploit. Burden effects increase target weight, slowing movement or outright immobilizing them if burden exceeds their carrying capacity. Most players use burden defensively to slow melee enemies charging at them. However, burden has offensive applications that exploit encumbrance mechanics. Overburdened enemies cannot move, but they also cannot be knocked down, cannot flee, and cannot dodge or block effectively. They become stationary targets who can only attack if you enter melee range. Cast Burden at range, root the enemy in place, then pelt them with ranged attacks until dead. They cannot chase, cannot escape, cannot do anything except stand helplessly absorbing damage. The exploit works especially well on dangerous melee enemies like Minotaur Lords, who would otherwise close distance rapidly and murder fragile mages. Burden them into immobility, then leisurely cast destruction spells from safety. They're stuck, unable to threaten you, functionally removed from combat without dying. Burden also works on fleeing enemies who try to run away after becoming frightened. Burden them when they flee, and they're stuck in retreat animation, frozen mid-run, unable to escape but also unable to fight back. It's humiliating but effective crowd control. The Dispel Magic hidden utility. Dispel effects remove magical effects from targets, both hostile effects on yourself and beneficial effects on enemies. Most players use Dispel to cleanse themselves of curses or debuffs. However, Dispel's offensive capability against buffed enemies is underutilized. Enemy mages frequently cast protective spells, reflect, shield, resist effects. Dispel removes these protections instantly, leaving them vulnerable. A Lich with stacked defensive magic becomes unprotected with one Dispel cast, allowing your destruction spells to deal full damage. The spell is especially powerful against summoners. Dispel removes their summoned creatures instantly, despawning them without combat. Conjurers become helpless when their summoned minions vanish, leaving them exposed to direct attack. The area of effect version of Dispel can remove all magical effects from multiple enemies simultaneously, stripping entire groups of their buffs in one cast. This creates devastating openings in group combat, where enemies are suddenly vulnerable. Dispel is also the counter to enemy chameleon effects. NPCs with chameleon become visible when dispelled, ending their invisibility advantage. Understanding Dispel's offensive applications transforms it from situational utility into active combat tool that dismantles enemy strategies before they can execute them. The Feather Effect Exploration Advantage. Feather effects reduce item weight, increasing carrying capacity and preventing over-encumbrance. Most players use Feather for inventory management, casting it when approaching maximum capacity. However, Feather provides movement speed advantages beyond simple carrying capacity. Encumbrance affects movement speed on a sliding scale. Lighter characters move faster. Even if not over-encumbered, reducing effective weight through Feather increases movement speed slightly. This makes Feather a permanent mobility buff worth maintaining constantly. The best implementation is enchanting clothing with constant effect Feather, providing permanent movement speed increase alongside unlimited carrying capacity. Explorers who maintain constant Feather effects travel faster, loot more efficiently, and escape danger more easily. The speed increase isn't dramatic but compounds over dozens of hours, saving significant real-world time through accumulated faster movement. Feather also affects jump height and acrobatic skill effectiveness. Lighter characters jump higher and travel farther per jump. Combined with high acrobatics, constant Feather allows scaling buildings, reaching ledges, and accessing areas that heavy characters cannot. Feather transforms from inventory management tool into exploration enhancement that makes traversing Cyrodiil more fluid and efficient. The Restore attribute priority. Damage. Attribute effects from curses or traps permanently reduce stats until cured, unlike Drain attribute, which is temporary. Damaged attributes don't regenerate naturally. They require Restore attribute effects from potions, spells, or chapel prayers. However, different attributes have vastly different priority for restoration. Damaged intelligence is critical because it reduces maximum magicka, crippling spellcasters. Damaged willpower slows magicka regeneration. Damaged strength reduces carrying capacity. Damaged agility affects defense. But here's the secret. Luck affects all skills and actions, including magic. So damaged luck subtly reduces effectiveness across the board without obvious indicators. Many players ignore damaged luck because they don't notice its effects, then wonder why. They're suddenly failing at everything. The priority for restoration should be intelligence first for mages, strength first for warriors worried about encumbrance, and luck second for everyone because of its hidden universal impact. Carrying Restore attribute potions for intelligence and luck specifically prevents the most crippling debuffs from ruining dungeon delves. Chapel prayers cure all damaged attributes simultaneously, but that's inconvenient mid-adventure. Smart mages always carry Restore potions as emergency insurance against debilitating attribute damage. The Soul Trap Door exploit. Soul Trap must be active on a creature when it dies for the soul to be captured. Most players cast Soul Trap, kill the creature quickly, then capture the soul. However, Soul Trap can be cast on creatures you haven't aggroed yet, and the spell's duration timer doesn't start until combat begins. You can cast Soul Trap on passive creatures through doors or walls before entering rooms, pre-preparing for soul capture. When you eventually enter and kill them, the Soul Trap is still active, capturing souls efficiently. The exploit extends to casting Soul Trap on friendly or neutral NPCs before provoking them, ensuring soul capture when they inevitably turn hostile and die. This works for quest targets who become hostile mid-dialogue. Soul trap them during conversation. Then, when they attack, killing them traps their soul automatically. The technique is especially useful for Black Soul gems. Command humanoid an enemy, soul trap them while friendly, then kill them. Their soul is captured without bounty because they were technically friendly when they died. The door exploit specifically refers to casting through loading zone doors. Soul Trap has enough range to hit targets on the other side of doors, so you can prepare captures without entering dangerous areas first. The Detect Life Stealth Revelation. Detect Life outlines living creatures through walls and darkness, providing X-ray vision effectively. Most players use it for avoiding enemies or finding hidden NPCs. However, Detect Life negates stealth builds entirely when used against the player. If enemies had Detect Life active, sneaking would be impossible. Fortunately, enemy AI doesn't use Detect Life, so players can sneak freely. But here's the revelation. You can use Detect Life to detect sneaking enemies. Thieves, assassins, and certain quest NPCs sneak and become nearly invisible at high skill levels. Detect Life reveals them regardless of stealth skill, making ambushes impossible. Cast Detect Life in ambush-prone areas, and you see assassins positioning for strikes, preventing surprise attacks. The spell effectively neutralizes enemy stealth capabilities, flipping the usual stealth advantage from enemies to you. Combined with Area of Effect Detect Life, you gain permanent awareness of all nearby creatures, making ambushes, traps, and surprise encounters impossible. You always know what's around corners, behind doors, or lurking in shadows. The spell transforms dangerous dungeon exploration into calculated tactical planning where uncertainty is eliminated, replaced by perfect information. The multiple summon immunity. You can only maintain one summoned creature at a time. Casting a second summon despawns the first. However, summons granted by items or birth signs operate under different rules. The summoned Dremora Lord Lesser power from certain quests persists separately from spellcast summons. You can have a spell summon creature and a power summon creature simultaneously without despawning either. This allows doubling your summoned army without exploiting staff mechanics. The discovery is that different summoning sources don't conflict. Spellcast summons, power-granted summons, staff-cast summons, and item effect summons all exist in separate slots. Collect items that grant summoning powers, and you can deploy small armies. The Conjurer's Phylactery from Necromancer Loot provides passive summon bonuses. The Ring of Summons from Random Loot provides additional summoning. Stack these with spell summons and power summons, and you're commanding multiple creatures without glitches or exploits, simply through legitimate game mechanics most players never discover. The multi-source summon strategy creates overwhelming numerical advantage in combat, as enemies prioritize attacking summoned creatures over you, allowing you to cast uninterrupted. The Reflect Damage Physical Counter. Reflect Damage mirrors physical damage back at attackers, punishing melee enemies for striking you. Most players enchant armor with Reflect Damage for passive defense. However, Reflect Damage stacks additively, and there's no cap. Enchant 5 armor pieces with 20% reflect damage each, and you're reflecting 100% of incoming physical damage back at attackers. Enemies effectively damage themselves when hitting you. Combined with high armor rating that reduces incoming damage, you take minimal damage while attackers receive full reflected amounts. The result is melee enemies dying rapidly from their own attacks while barely scratching you. The exploit is especially effective against fast-attacking enemies like wolves or bandits with daggers who attack rapidly. Each strike reflects damage, and rapid attacks mean rapid self-inflicted damage, killing them within seconds. Minotaurs and other high-damage enemies one-shot themselves when they hit you, dealing massive damage that reflects back at full magnitude while you mitigate the incoming portion. The strategy fails against ranged enemies and mages who don't melee, so pairing Reflect damage with Reflect spell creates all-encompassing reflection build, where enemies defeat themselves regardless of attack type. The invisibility potion stacking. Invisibility spells break when you perform actions, but invisibility potions work differently. Drinking multiple invisibility potions stacks their durations additively, creating extended invisibility that persists longer than any castable spell. Each potion provides typically 60 seconds. Drinking 5 provides 300 seconds of invisibility. The exploit is that potion-based invisibility functions identically to spell-based invisibility, but isn't affected by magic skill or magicka costs. Non-mage characters can achieve long-duration invisibility through potions, sneaking through areas that would otherwise require combat. The limitation is potion availability, but alchemy builds can mass-produce invisibility potions from common ingredients, creating unlimited invisibility resources. Nightshade and vampire dust combine to create invisibility potions, and both ingredients are farmable. Stock 50 invisibility potions, and you have 3,000 seconds of available invisibility, enough to clear multiple dungeons without legitimate gameplay. The potion stacking also bypasses the normal spell duration restrictions from skill level. Even novice alchemists can create long-duration invisibility through mass consumption, rather than efficient single potions. Chug 5 weak potions instead of 1 strong potion, achieving the same total effect. The magic resistance elemental interaction. Resist magic provides generic protection against all magical damage: fire, frost, shock, and generic magic damage. Resist fire, resist frost, and resist shock provide specialized protection against specific elements. When you have both general resist magic and specific elemental resistance, they stack additively. A Breton with 50% resist magic wearing a 50% resist fire item has 100% fire immunity while maintaining 50% resistance to other magic types. This allows building layered defenses where elemental weaknesses are eliminated through specific resists, while resist magic covers remaining gaps. The strategic implication is that you can achieve 100% immunity to your racial weakness without sacrificing general magical defense. Alma have 25% weakness to fire, frost, and shock, but they can wear 3 items enchanted with 25% resist fire, resist frost, and resist shock respectively, negating their weaknesses entirely, while still benefiting from resist magic items for other protections. Understanding how general and specific resistances stack allows creating mathematically optimized defensive configurations where you achieve multiple 100% immunities simultaneously, becoming immune to entire damage categories through deliberate itemization. The command spell duration secret. Command spell's effectiveness depends on magnitude relative to target level, not duration. A 25 magnitude command spell works on targets up to level 25, regardless of duration. The duration only determines how long they remain commanded, not whether the spell succeeds. This creates a critical optimization. Use minimum duration command spells to reduce magicka cost, since duration doesn't affect success rate. Cast 1-second command spells repeatedly rather than long-duration expensive versions. Each cast costs minimal magicka, and if the enemy dies within 1 second, the duration was sufficient. If they survive, cast again immediately. The real exploit is that commanded enemies don't aggro after command expires if you haven't damaged them during the command duration. You can command an enemy, walk away, let command expire, and they return to neutral rather than hostile. This allows using command to pacify enemies without fighting, commanding them briefly to suppress aggression, then disengaging before expiration. They forget the encounter entirely, returning to patrol routes peacefully. The technique allows ghosting through areas without combat or sneaking, simply commanding guards or monsters repeatedly as you pass, then moving forward while they stand confused, wondering why they felt compelled to stop attacking. The Fortify Speed Movement exploit. Speed affects movement rate directly. Higher speed means faster running, swimming, and overall movement. Fortify Speed effects temporarily boost this attribute, increasing movement speed dramatically. At very high speed values, you can cross Cyrodiil in minutes rather than hours, outrun any enemy, and escape danger effortlessly. The exploit is that Fortify Speed stacks with other speed boosting effects like Fortify Athletics. Combine multiple sources and you become supersonic, moving so fast that enemies can't track or target you. Combat becomes trivial because you're too fast to be hit, circling around enemies while they slowly rotate trying to acquire you as a target. The movement speed allows exploiting game world design. Outrun falling debris, escape collapsing traps, and traverse dangerous areas before enemies react. The most extreme application is Fortify Speed Potions crafted with maximized alchemy skill, providing speed boosts exceeding 200%. At that speed, the game world becomes a blur, and you travel faster than textures can load, sometimes phasing through walls or falling through floors, because the collision detection can't keep up. The exploit breaks immersion and game balance, but provides practical utility for impatient players who want fast travel without loading screens. The Drain Skill Permanent Reduction. Drain skill effects temporarily reduce skills, but unlike damage skill, they're not permanent. They expire after duration ends. However, Drain skill can reduce skills below 0, creating temporary negative skill values. At negative skill levels, actions associated with that skill become dramatically harder or impossible. Drain security to negative values, and locks become unpickable even for master thieves. Drain alteration to negative values, and the victim cannot cast alteration spells regardless of spell level. The application is using Drain skill offensively against enemies. Drain a mage's destruction skill to negatives, and they cannot cast destruction magic, neutering their primary offense. Drain a warrior's blade skill, and their weapon attacks deal minimal damage and miss frequently. The skill drain strategy is more effective than simply dealing damage because it disables enemy capabilities entirely, rather than whittling health bars. A drained enemy is helpless, unable to execute their combat strategy, flailing ineffectively while you methodically destroy them. The exploit works best with high magnitude, long duration drain skill effects that keep enemies neutered for extended periods, allowing sustained one-sided combat where enemies cannot fight back effectively. The Ease Burden spell, Hidden Buff. Feather reduces item weight, allowing greater carrying capacity. However, there's a separate spell called Ease Burden that functions almost identically, but has a hidden mechanical difference. Ease Burden is categorized as restoration magic, while feather is categorized as alteration magic. This means characters specializing in restoration can cast Ease Burden more efficiently than feather despite the identical effect. However, the real secret is that Ease Burden and feather stack additively. Cast both simultaneously, and your carrying capacity increases by both effects combined. This allows characters to carry absurd amounts without encumbrance by stacking encumbrance-reducing effects from multiple schools of magic. The most efficient pack rats cast Ease, Burden, and Feather simultaneously, wear Fortify Strength enchantments to increase natural carrying capacity, and consume Fortify Strength potions for temporary boosts. Combined, they can carry thousands of pounds, looting entire dungeons down to individual arrows and pieces of armor without ever needing to make multiple trips. The strategy is overkill for normal gameplay, but essential for loot-focused players who refuse to leave anything behind. The Night Eye Duration exploit. Night Eye provides perfect vision in darkness for its duration. However, Night Eye effects from multiple sources stack in strange ways. Casting multiple Night Eye spells simultaneously doesn't create super night vision. It extends the duration additively. Cast 3 60-second Night Eye spells simultaneously, and you have 180 seconds of night vision from a single casting burst. The exploit is useful for extended dungeon delving, where reapplying night vision constantly is inconvenient. Cast stacked night vision once before entering, and you're set for minutes. The more useful discovery is that Night Eye enchantments on items provide constant effect vision enhancement without duration limits. Enchant any item with 1 point Night Eye, and you have permanent night vision that never expires. There's no magnitude to night vision. It's binary, on or off. Even 1 point Night Eye provides full brightness adjustment. This makes Night Eye one of the most efficient constant effect enchantments possible, requiring minimal soul gem investment for permanent utility. Any character wearing a Night Eye enchanted item never experiences darkness, making torches, light spells, and darkness-related challenges irrelevant. The Conjuration Necromancy boundary. The Mages Guild bans necromancy, and practicing it results in expulsion. However, the game's definition of necromancy is surprisingly narrow. Conjuring undead creatures through summon spells is not considered necromancy. Only using Soul Trap on humans with Black Soul gems is. This means you can summon zombies, ghosts, skeletons, and leeches without guild consequences. The boundary is confusing because thematically, summoning undead seems like necromancy, but mechanically, it's conjuration, which is legal. The exploit is that you can practice dark magic openly while maintaining guild membership by avoiding Black Soul gems. Use regular soul gems for enchanting, summon undead freely for combat, and the guild has no complaints. Only when you trap human souls does necromancy prosecution begin. This allows dark mages to roleplay as morally questionable wizards without suffering mechanical consequences, summoning undead armies while technically following guild rules. The distinction matters because guild membership provides access to the Arcane University for spellcrafting and enchanting, resources essential for advanced magic builds. Understanding the narrow necromancy definition allows keeping guild benefits while practicing dark magic. The Frenzy Suicide exploit. Frenzy effects cause targets to attack anything nearby, including allies. Most players use Frenzy for crowd control, making enemies fight each other. However, Frenzy has a hidden interaction with suicidal AI behavior. When cast on an enemy surrounded by much stronger allies, the frenzied enemy attacks those allies, who retaliate and kill them rapidly. You've essentially tricked enemies into executing their own members. The exploit is targeting the weakest enemy in a group with frenzy, causing them to attack their strongest ally. The weak enemy dies almost instantly from retaliation, reducing enemy numbers without you dealing damage. Repeat on each member systematically, forcing each to suicide against their surviving companions until only one remains. That final enemy, having killed all their allies, is now alone and damaged from the mutual combat, easy to finish off. The frenzy suicide strategy allows clearing entire dungeons without personal combat, instead manipulating AI behavior to make enemies murder each other. It's slower than direct combat, but conserves magicka and health, making it useful for fragile mages who cannot survive sustained fighting. The spell absorption blessing interaction. Chapel blessings provide temporary buffs when you pray at altars. However, characters with spell absorption can absorb these blessings as magicka instead of receiving the benefits. At 50% spell absorption, half of blessing attempts are absorbed. At 100%, you cannot receive blessings at all. They're all converted to magicka restoration. This seems like a disadvantage, but it's exploitable. Blessings are infinite and free. You can pray repeatedly at altars without cost. With 100% spell absorption, you can spam pray at altars, absorbing magicka with each attempt, refilling your magicka pool instantly and repeatedly for free. The exploit turns chapels into magicka restoration stations superior to waiting. Enter a chapel with depleted magicka. Pray 20 times in rapid succession. Leave with full magicka. The technique is especially useful in cities where chapels are easily accessible. After clearing a dungeon and returning to town, visit the chapel and spam pray to instantly restore all magicka before selling loot or continuing adventures. The spell absorption blessing interaction reveals unintended synergies between different game systems, creating advantages from what was designed as a drawback. The invisibility detection paradox. Invisibility makes you unseen by enemies, but it doesn't affect detect life. Enemies using detect life can see invisible characters through walls and darkness. Fortunately, enemy AI doesn't use detect life, so player invisibility works reliably. However, the paradox is that you can use detect life to see invisible enemies. Certain enemies, ghosts, vampires, sneaking thieves, become nearly invisible through transparency effects. Detect life highlights them clearly, negating their invisibility advantage. The interaction creates a counter dynamic where the tools for stealth, invisibility and chameleon are also the detection tools for anti-stealth, detect life. Master infiltrators carry both, using invisibility for offense and detect life for defense. The paradox extends to enemy players in theoretical PvP scenarios. If Oblivion had multiplayer, invisibility would be countered by detect life, creating strategic rock-paper-scissors between offense, defense and detection. Practically understanding the invisibility detection relationship prevents surprise attacks from invisible enemies and allows hunting sneaking targets effectively. The absorb health sustain loop. Absorb health drains enemy health while restoring yours simultaneously. Each point absorbed is removed from the target and added to you, creating efficient lifesteal effects. The spell seems straightforward, but has hidden synergy with weakness effects. Cast weakness to magic, then absorb health, and the absorbed amount increases dramatically because the weakness amplifies the spell's effectiveness. You drain more health per cast, while healing correspondingly more, creating a sustained loop where you out-heal incoming damage through aggressive life-stealing. Against single powerful enemies, the absorb health sustain strategy allows winning attrition battles where you'd normally die. Each cast damages them while healing you, creating a slow, inevitable victory through superior sustain. The lifesteal becomes extreme when stacking multiple weakness effects before absorb health. With proper weakness stacking, each absorb cast drains 300 plus health, while healing you equivalently, making you effectively immortal as long as magicka lasts. The strategy fails against groups because you can only target one enemy at a time, making area of effect destruction more efficient for crowd clearing. But against bosses or mini-bosses, absorb health sustain loops trivialize encounters through mathematical inevitability. You out-heal damage, so you cannot die. The Fortify Magicka enchanting stacking. Fortify Magicka enchantments increase maximum magicka pool permanently while worn. Unlike spell effects, enchantments don't have durations. They're constant as long as items are equipped. This allows stacking multiple Fortify Magicka enchantments across different equipment pieces for enormous magicka pools. Enchant ring, amulet, robes, hood, boots, and gloves with Fortify Magicka, and your pool increases by hundreds. Combined with high intelligence, you achieve magicka totals exceeding 1,000, allowing casting of even the most expensive spells freely. The enchanting stacking strategy creates self-reinforcing power spirals. High magicka allows casting expensive spellcrafting attempts without failure. Better spells make enchanting more efficient. Better enchantments provide even higher magicka, enabling yet more expensive spells. The feedback loop results in exponential power growth, limited only by available enchanting resources and soul gems. Optimized mages treat Fortify Magicka as their primary enchanting priority, maximizing magicka pool before pursuing other effects because magicka is the foundational resource enabling all other magical actions. The Burden Death exploit. Burden increases target weight, potentially overburdening and immobilizing them. However, extreme burden magnitudes can increase enemy weight beyond what the game can handle, causing bizarre physics interactions. Enemies overburdened to thousands of pounds sometimes fall through floors or become launched by physics glitches when they try to move. The game's physics engine struggles processing entities with impossibly high weight values, creating unintended lethal consequences. The exploit is casting ultra-high magnitude burden on enemies standing near edges or on bridges. The physics glitch launches them or causes them to fall through level geometry, removing them from combat without damage-based killing. They simply vanish, falling into the void beneath the game world. Alternatively, overburdened enemies near exploding traps or collapsing structures take massively increased physics-based damage because their simulated weight affects momentum calculations. They're crushed by debris that would normally damage but not kill, dying instantly from environmental hazards. The Burden Death exploit is unreliable and unpredictable, but when it works, it's hilarious and effective. The spell Reflection lifespan extension. Reflect spell bounces hostile magic back at casters, turning enemy offense into their own problem. However, Reflect also works on self-cast spells. If you have Reflect chance and cast a spell on yourself, it might reflect, causing the spell to fail. This seems negative, but it creates an exploit for extending beneficial spell durations. Cast a buff spell on yourself, like Fortify Speed, and if you have low Reflect chance, most casts succeed normally. However, occasional Reflects create free casts where the magicka is spent, but the spell doesn't apply, effectively resetting the cast without duration progress. The exploit is minor and unreliable, But players notice that self-cast spells interacting with Reflect create strange timing loops where durations desynchronize from expectations. More practically, Reflect prevents self-damage from area of effect spells. Cast AoE destruction magic in melee range, and without Reflect, you damage yourself. With high Reflect, your own AoE spells sometimes bounce back and don't harm you, allowing aggressive close-range spell casting without self-inflicted damage risk. The Reflect self-cast interaction creates nuanced tactical considerations around defensive builds that incorporate offensive magic. The Fortify skill, spellcrafting efficiency. When creating custom spells, cost is calculated based on your current skill level in the spell school. Higher skills reduce cost proportionally. However, you can temporarily boost skills through Fortify skill effects, reducing spellcrafting costs below what your natural skill would allow. Cast Fortify Destruction on yourself, raising destruction skill temporarily. Then create destruction spells at the altar of spellmaking. The temporarily boosted skill reduces the created spell's base cost permanently. When the fortification expires, you're left with spells that cost less magicka than your natural skill would normally allow. This exploit allows crafting efficient spells far earlier than natural skill progression would permit. A novice mage with Fortify skill buffs can create spells with expert level cost efficiency, accessing late game power early through clever preparation. The strategy requires access to Fortify skill effects through potions, enchantments or scrolls, but the permanent cost reduction on crafted spells makes the investment worthwhile. Master spellcrafters maintain Fortify skill effects permanently through enchanted equipment, creating all their custom spells with maximally efficient costs regardless of natural skill levels. The Wrist Irons. Enchanting secret, the Wrist Irons you start the game wearing seem like worthless trash to be immediately discarded. However, they're actually one of the most valuable items for mage builds because they occupy the wrist armor slot, a slot no other armor pieces use. Clothing can be enchanted without penalties to spell effectiveness, while armor cannot. The Wrist Irons count as clothing, not armor, making them enchantable without reducing your spell power. More importantly, they're the only wrist slot item in the entire game, giving you an extra enchantment slot that no other build can access. This additional enchantment provides Fortify Magicka, Chameleon, or any other effect without sacrificing other equipment slots. Players who discarded their starting Wrist Irons early game can find replacements on prisoners in various dungeons, but they're rare. Understanding the Wrist Irons' unique status transforms them from starter trash into endgame optimization gear. The Open Lock spell scaling. Open lock spells bypass lockpicking entirely, automatically opening locks of appropriate difficulty based on spell magnitude. However, the spell's mechanics scale strangely. A 25 magnitude open lock spell opens very easy locks, 50 magnitude opens easy locks, 75 magnitude opens average locks, and 100 magnitude opens hard locks. Very hard locks cannot be opened with magic at all, requiring manual lockpicking. This creates an interesting limitation where master mages still need physical lockpicking skills for the highest security locks. The spell's utility is convenience, not universal access. You can sprint through dungeons opening every average and lower lock with a quick spell cast, saving lockpicks and time. Combined with high alteration skill, reducing the spell's cost. Open lock becomes nearly free door opening for most obstacles. The spell also works on trapped locks without triggering traps, providing safety alongside convenience. Master infiltrators carry open lock spells for speed and lockpicks for very hard locks, combining magical and mundane skills. The vampirism magical advantages. Vampirism inflicts severe penalties, sun damage, reputation hits, and permanent hunger. However, it provides massive magical benefits that min-maxers exploit. Vampires gain increasing attribute bonuses as they go longer without feeding, eventually receiving 20 points to multiple attributes including intelligence and willpower. For mages, this translates to dramatically increased magicka pools and faster regeneration. Additionally, vampires gain resist normal weapons, resist disease, and enhance physical capabilities. The magical build potential is enormous. Combined with the right equipment, vampire mages become nearly unstoppable, wielding vastly superior stats compared to mortal equivalents. The sun damage is manageable through careful travel scheduling or simply fast traveling exclusively. The reputation penalties become irrelevant once you're powerful enough to ignore social consequences. For pure power gaming, accepting vampirism and managing its downsides provides advantages no other build path offers. Master vampire mages schedule their feeding to maintain maximum stat bonuses while avoiding the worst starvation penalties, gaming the hunger system for optimal power. The magic trap disarm. Interaction. Traps in dungeons deal fire, frost, or shock damage when triggered. Most players either tank the damage or manually disarm traps using security skills. However, magic offers an alternative. High elemental resistances effectively disarm traps by reducing their damage to negligible amounts. A mage with 85% resist fire takes only 15% damage from fire traps, making them minor inconveniences rather than threats. Stack resistances to 100%, and traps become completely harmless. You can trigger every trap freely without consequence, simplifying navigation dramatically. The strategy is especially effective in Oblivion planes where fire traps are ubiquitous. Maintain high fire resistance, and you walk through Daedric architecture freely, ignoring defensive mechanisms entirely. Combined with feather effects for mobility, trap-immune mages traverse dangerous areas faster than cautious rogue builds, who must carefully disarm or avoid each hazard. Understanding that resistances effectively counter traps reveals that defensive magic provides offensive advantages through environmental immunity. The charm duration commerce. Charm effects increase NPC disposition temporarily, improving their opinion of you. This affects merchant prices, information sharing, and quest outcomes. Most players use charm during persuasion minigames for disposition boosts. However, charm's true power is merchant exploitation. Cast high magnitude charm on merchants before trading, maximizing disposition to 100, and prices become extremely favorable. You buy items for much less and sell items for much more compared to neutral disposition. The profit margins are substantial. Over dozens of transactions, charm-boosted trading saves thousands of gold. The exploit is creating cheap, long-duration charm spells specifically for commerce. A 100 magnitude, 10-second charm spell costs relatively little and provides maximum disposition for long enough to complete entire trading sessions. Master merchants travel town to town, charming shopkeepers before each transaction, manipulating prices systematically for maximum profit. The technique also works on trainers, reducing training costs through disposition manipulation. Economic mages treat charm as essential infrastructure for accumulating wealth through social engineering, rather than dungeon looting. The summon armor, strategic value. Bound armor spells summon temporary armor pieces with set ratings and occasionally enchantments. Most players ignore bound armor because it requires constant recasting and provides inferior protection compared to crafted physical armor. However, bound armor has hidden strategic value for specific builds. It weighs nothing, contributing 0 encumbrance, allowing glass cannon mages to maintain mobility without armor penalties. Bound armor also doesn't reduce spell effectiveness like physical armor does, preserving full magical power while providing some defense. The pieces can be summoned instantly mid-combat, allowing mages to adapt to situations dynamically. Facing unexpectedly tough melee enemies, summon armor temporarily, absorb a few hits, then dismiss it and return to unarmored casting. The flexibility is valuable for unpredictable encounters. Additionally, bound armor benefits from armor skill improvements. As your light or heavy armor skill increases, bound armor's effectiveness improves proportionally, scaling naturally without upgrades. This passive scaling makes bound armor increasingly viable at higher levels when cast costs become negligible. The Disintegrate Weapon Armor Pacification. Disintegrate Weapon and Disintegrate Armor effects permanently destroy equipped items, reducing their durability to 0. Enemies wearing disintegrated equipment suffer massive penalties. Warriors with disintegrated weapons deal minimal damage, reduced to punching ineffectively. Enemies with disintegrated armor lose all protection, taking full damage from your attacks. The spells effectively pacify dangerous physical threats by removing their combat capability. A fully armored knight with a legendary sword becomes a naked peasant swinging fists after targeted disintegration. The strategy is especially effective against boss-type enemies who rely on superior equipment. Disintegrate their gear systematically, and they're reduced to helpless damage sponges who cannot meaningfully fight back. The spells also work on enemy summons and certain quest NPCs, allowing you to neutralize threats without killing. The disintegrated enemy survives, but cannot contribute to combat, effectively removed from the battle. Master controllers combine disintegration with crowd control, systematically disabling enemy capabilities, then overwhelming helpless opponents. The light spell hidden mechanics. Light spells create floating orbs that illuminate areas. However, light has hidden properties beyond simple visibility enhancement. The spell creates actual light sources that affect shadow rendering and enemy perception. Enemies using line of sight detection can be blinded by placing light spells directly on their faces, reducing their detection range dramatically. They see only bright light, not you lurking in adjacent darkness. The tactical application involves casting light on enemy heads, then circling around and attacking from behind while they're effectively blinded. Additionally, light can be cast on surfaces to mark locations, creating navigation aids in complex dungeons. Cast light at intersections as waypoint markers, preventing getting lost in confusing layouts. The spells persist for their full duration regardless of distance, so you can mark entire dungeon paths systematically while exploring. Light also reveals invisible enemies. Creatures using invisibility or chameleon effects become partially visible when light spells illuminate them, negating stealth advantages. The spell's utility extends far beyond basic illumination into tactical combat applications and navigation. Enhancement. The Fortify Personality Speechcraft Boost. Personality governs speechcraft effectiveness, affecting persuasion success rates and disposition gains from minigames. However, Fortify personality effects temporarily increase the attribute, making persuasion dramatically easier. At very high personality values, persuasion minigames become nearly impossible to fail. Every rotation success chance approaches 100%, guaranteeing maximum disposition gains. The exploit is casting Fortify Personality before important conversations or persuasion attempts. Need to bribe a guard. Fortify Personality first, reducing the bribe amount through enhanced speechcraft. Need to intimidate an NPC. Fortify Personality for overwhelming social pressure. The spell transforms social encounters from skill-based challenges into automatic successes through attribute inflation, combined with charm spells for additional disposition boosts. You can manipulate any NPC to maximum disposition, regardless of natural speechcraft skill. Master diplomats maintain permanent Fortify Personality enchantments, sailing through social interactions without effort. The damage fatigue non-lethal. Takedown. Damage fatigue drains target stamina without affecting health. When fatigue reaches 0, targets collapse unconscious, but don't die. This creates a non-lethal combat option for pacifist players or specific quest requirements. Cast damage fatigue repeatedly until enemies collapse helplessly, then walk away, leaving them unconscious but alive. The takedown strategy works on all enemy types, from bandits to Daedra. However, unconscious enemies recover after several seconds, standing back up and resuming combat. The practical application is creating temporary openings for escape or repositioning. Fatigue drain an entire enemy group, causing them to collapse simultaneously, then sprint past or loot while they're helpless. By the time they recover, you're gone. The non-lethal option also satisfies certain quest requirements that penalize killing. Missions requiring stealth or non-aggression can be completed by fatiguing guards or witnesses rather than murdering them, avoiding quest failure conditions while still neutralizing opposition. The Absorb Fatigue Stamina. Sustain. Absorb Fatigue drains target stamina while restoring yours simultaneously. This seems less useful than Absorb Health because fatigue doesn't keep you alive. However, fatigue affects sprinting, power attacks, and blocking. Maintaining high fatigue through absorption allows sustained aggressive combat without stamina depletion. You can sprint infinitely, power attack repeatedly, and block constantly because each absorb cast restores more stamina than you expend. The sustain loop creates warrior-mage hybrids who fight relentlessly without exhaustion, draining enemy stamina while keeping their own maxed. Combined with weapons or spells, you maintain maximum combat effectiveness indefinitely. Enemies, meanwhile, lose stamina, reducing their offensive and defensive capabilities until they collapse from exhaustion. The Absorb Fatigue strategy dominates drawn-out battles where stamina management becomes critical. Normal warriors must pace themselves, conserving stamina for crucial moments. Absorb Fatigue. Users fight at maximum intensity constantly, overwhelming enemies through relentless pressure. The Calm Theft combination. Calm effects pacify enemies temporarily, suppressing aggression. However, calmed enemies don't react to theft or trespassing. This creates an exploit for stealing in plain sight. Cast Calm on witnesses, then steal everything around them. They stand passively watching, unable to process that a crime is occurring. When Calm expires, they notice items are missing but have no memory of who took them, providing no crime report to guards. The strategy allows daylight robbery in populated areas. Calm the shopkeeper, loot the store, leave before Calm expires. No witnesses, no bounty, perfect crime. The only limitation is Calm magnitude must exceed target level, requiring investment in spell power for high-level witnesses. Combined with high illusion skill reducing costs, You can systematically rob entire towns by calming residents sequentially and stealing everything valuable. The theft combination transforms calm from defensive utility into criminal infrastructure, enabling systematic larceny without consequences. The Reflect Damage boss melting. Reflect Damage mirrors physical damage back at attackers. Against rapid attacking enemies, this kills them quickly. However, against single strike high damage enemies like bosses, Reflect Damage becomes boss melting technology. Bosses often use powerful charged attacks dealing several hundred damage in one strike. With 100% Reflect Damage, that entire attack reflects back, dealing the boss's own damage to itself. One attack, and the boss has lost a third of its health. The exploit is Building Pure Reflect Damage. Defensive characters who barely attack personally, but instead allow enemies to kill themselves through reflected damage. Tank boss attacks reflect enormous damage, and the boss dies rapidly from its own strength. The strategy fails against weak, rapid attackers, but excels against heavy-hitting bosses, where each reflected strike is devastating. Combined with high health pools for survivability and healing magic for sustain, Reflect Damage builds turn boss encounters into waiting games where the boss inevitably self-destructs through its own power. The Weakness Poison Alchemy Exploitation. Weakness effects can be applied through alchemy, creating weakness poisons. Coating weapons with weakness poisons applies the debuff on hit. Then subsequent attacks benefit from the weakness, dealing amplified damage. The exploit is that poisons apply instantly, affecting the same strike that delivers them. Weakness to fire poison plus fire enchanted weapon means the fire damage is amplified by the weakness immediately, not on subsequent hits. This creates one-shot potential where the combined weakness and damage strike deals absurd damage in a single attack. Craft weakness to magic magnitude 100 poisons. Apply to weapons enchanted with magic damage, and each strike deals triple damage or more. Combined with sneak attack critical multipliers, you assassinate enemies instantly from stealth, eliminating threats before combat begins. Master assassins maintain stockpiles of stacked weakness poisons for different damage types, selecting optimal combinations against specific enemy resistances. The Summon Creature Aggro Control. Summon creatures draw enemy aggro automatically, but you can control which enemies they engage through positioning. Summon a creature behind enemy lines, and it attracts attention from backline casters, pulling them out of position. Summon a creature blocking a doorway, and it tanks melee enemies attempting to reach you. Summon multiple creatures through staff exploitation, and you control battlefield flow by positioning disposable allies strategically. The aggro control allows solo mages to function as tactical generals, managing combat through summon placement rather than direct participation. Enemies focus on summon threats, ignoring you completely, allowing uninterrupted casting. Bosses waste powerful attacks on disposable scamps, while you channel destruction magic safely. The creature positioning micromanagement separates competent summoners from masters who treat summons as tactical pieces to be sacrificed strategically for maximum advantage. The Restore Magicka Potion. Burst. Restore Magicka Potions refill Magicka instantly, unlike natural regeneration, which is gradual. However, potions can be consumed rapidly, multiple per second, if you spam the consumption button. This allows burst Magicka restoration mid-combat for emergency spell casting. Depleted Magicka while fighting a boss. Chug. 3. Restore Magicka potions in 2 seconds. Refill completely. Continue casting. The burst restoration allows high-intensity spell casting beyond what your natural pool permits. carry 50 Restore Magicka potions, and your effective Magicka pool is 50 times larger than displayed, limited only by potion supply. Master alchemists mass-produce cheap Restore Magicka potions from common ingredients, ensuring unlimited magical resources. The potion spam strategy trivializes Magicka management, allowing even inefficient spells to be cast freely, because potion restoration compensates for waste. Combined with powerful but expensive spells, you become a mobile artillery platform, sustained by alchemy rather than natural resources. The Fortify Luck skill. Amplification. Luck affects every skill and action in the game subtly, improving success rates and outcomes. However, the effect is minor at natural luck values. Fortify Luck dramatically amplifies these benefits, improving all skills simultaneously. At very high luck values, weapon attacks crit more frequently, spells land more reliably, persuasion succeeds easier, and loot quality improves. The luck amplification provides universal benefit without specialization, making it valuable for hybrid builds. One enchantment slot with Fortify Luck improves everything rather than boosting one specific skill. The hidden power is that luck affects magic success rates against resistant enemies. Spells that normally fail against high resistance targets succeed more often with boosted luck, effectively ignoring partial resistances. Master enchanters prioritize Fortify Luck alongside Fortify Magicka because luck provides multiplicative benefits across all actions, while Magicka provides raw resource depth. The Dispel Potion counter magic. Dispel effects remove magical effects from targets, including your own buffs. However, Dispel Potions can be thrown at enemies to remove their protective magic without casting spells. This provides counter magic capability for non-mage builds. Warriors and thieves carrying Dispel Potions can neutralize buffed enemy mages by throwing potions at them, stripping defensive magic and leaving them vulnerable. The potion throw mechanic is clunky but effective, and Dispel Potions are cheap to craft from common ingredients. Stocking 20 Dispel Potions provides reliable counter-magic resources for extended adventures without requiring mysticism skill investment. The strategy also works for removing hostile spell effects from yourself without casting. Cursed by a Lich. Drink a Dispel Potion to cleanse the curse instantly. Affected by enemy buffs that make combat harder. Dispel Potion removes them. The potions provide magical utility to non-magical characters, democratizing access to spell-like effects through alchemy. The Shield Spell Damage Reduction Cap. Shield spells provide flat damage reduction against physical attacks, reducing each incoming hit by the spell's magnitude. ATI, 85% damage reduction. You've hit the armor cap. Additional shield effects are wasted. However, shield stacks with physical armor, allowing you to reach the cap through combined sources. Low armor mages can cast shield to compensate for lacking physical protection, achieving cap-level damage reduction through magic rather than equipment. The spell effectively replaces armor for cloth-wearing casters, providing equivalent protection without encumbrance or spell effectiveness penalties. The damage reduction is especially valuable against rapid attackers who strike multiple times per second. Each strike is reduced by the shield magnitude, making shield more effective per point against rapid attackers than against slow heavy hitters. Combined with reflect damage, shield-protected mages become paradoxically durable, taking minimal damage while reflecting whatever penetrates shield back at attackers. The Fortify Endurance Retroactive Health. Endurance governs health gains when leveling. Each level, you gain health based on current endurance value. However, Fortify endurance effects don't retroactively increase health from previous levels. leveling with low endurance. Then fortifying endurance later provides less total health, then maintaining high endurance throughout leveling. This creates optimization pressure to maximize endurance early for long-term health advantages. However, fortify endurance effects do increase current health temporarily while active. Cast Fortify Endurance, and your maximum health rises proportionally. When the effect expires, maximum health decreases, but current health scales down safely without killing you. The temporary health boost allows surviving dangerous encounters through buff stacking, artificially inflating health before battles, then accepting the deflation afterward. The endurance-health relationship rewards long-term planning, encouraging builds that prioritize endurance early for cumulative health benefits throughout the character's lifespan. The Silence Enemy Caster Shutdown. Silence effects prevent spellcasting entirely, muting targets for the duration. Against enemy mages, silence is a death sentence. They cannot cast offensive spells, defensive spells, healing spells, or summons. They're reduced to melee with whatever weapons they carry, if any. Most mages carry only staves or daggers for emergency melee, dealing pathetic damage. Silenced mages are effectively neutralized, helpless against competent combatants. The shutdown strategy involves casting silence immediately upon engaging enemy casters, preventing them from ever executing their combat strategy. They stand confused, unable to cast, while you methodically destroy them with impunity. The spell is especially effective in Necromancer lairs, where multiple mages fight simultaneously. Area of Effect Silence mutes entire groups, transforming dangerous magical assaults into trivial cleanup of melee incompetent wizards. Master Illusionists prioritize silence against magical opponents, treating it as hard counter that invalidates entire enemy archetypes through one cast. The Telekinesis Object Manipulation. Telekinesis moves objects at range, typically used for grabbing distant items. However, telekinesis can manipulate environmental objects for creative problem solving. Move objects to block doors, preventing enemy pursuit. Stack objects to create makeshift ladders for reaching high places. Throw objects at enemies for minor damage and stagger effects. The utility extends beyond looting to environmental interaction. Telekinesis also triggers pressure plates and buttons at range, allowing trap disarming or puzzle solving without physical presence. Dangerous trap switches can be activated safely from distance using telekinesis, avoiding the trap's effect radius. The spell provides utility for non-physical characters who cannot manipulate environments through strength-based methods. Fragile mages use telekinesis to interact with the world safely, solving problems through magical manipulation rather than physical risk. The spell's versatility makes it valuable beyond its obvious looting application, enabling creative solutions to obstacles. The Command Creature Allied Army. Command Creature turns hostile creatures friendly temporarily. However, commanded creatures don't just stop attacking you. They actively fight for you against other enemies. Cast command on the strongest enemy in a group, and it attacks its former allies. The strongest enemy typically has the best combat capabilities, making it the most valuable temporary ally. Command the boss. Let it kill the minions, then kill the weakened boss after command expires. The strategy inverts power dynamics, turning enemy strength against itself. Groups of enemies become liability rather than advantage, because the strongest member massacres the rest before you fight it alone. Command also works on creatures you haven't aggroed yet. Command a sleeping creature, and it joins you without ever realizing you were enemies. Walk deeper into the dungeon with your commanded temporary ally. using it to clear forward obstacles before releasing it after clearing areas. The creature army technique allows solo progression through group-oriented content by constantly cycling through temporary minions drawn from enemy ranks. The water-breathing lava walking. Water breathing allows swimming underwater indefinitely without drowning. However, the spell has a hidden interaction with lava. In Oblivion Plains, lava is mechanically treated as water, just with added fire damage. Cast water breathing, and you can swim in lava without drowning, though you still take fire damage. Combined with high resist fire, you can swim through lava seas freely, accessing areas enemies cannot reach because they lack fire resistance. The lava walking exploit allows shortcuts through Oblivion architecture, ignoring designed paths by swimming through lava hazards. With 85 Vika 100% resist fire, lava becomes navigable terrain rather than impassable barrier. You travel freely while enemies are restricted to solid ground, gaining positional advantages. The combination of water breathing and fire resistance transforms environmental hazards into highways, allowing creative navigation through spaces that seem inaccessible. The Open Spell Range Extension. Open spells unlock containers and doors at range, removing the need for physical interaction. The spell can potentially target locks at distance, depending on your positioning and the spell's effective range. Based on how the targeting system works, this could theoretically allow unlocking containers before physically reaching them in some situations. The range extension provides convenience for mages who want to unlock security without approaching closely. The spell allows unlocking doors and containers from a safer distance, particularly useful when you suspect traps or enemies nearby. The mechanic removes the need for lockpicking skill investment, using magic to bypass physical security. Infiltrators who invest in alteration can use open spells to access restricted areas without the sound or skill checks associated with lockpicking, providing a stealthier magical alternative to traditional thiefcraft. The Reflect Spell Duel, Stalemate. When two characters with high reflect spell percentages fight, spells bounce back and forth in reflection loops until someone's reflection fails. This creates bizarre dueling scenarios where spell outcomes are determined by reflection RNG rather than actual combat skill. The stalemate occurs when both parties have similar reflection percentages, each reflecting approximately half of incoming spells back and forth until probability resolves the loop. In practice, this means mage versus mage duels between reflection-heavy builds become gambles rather than skill contests. Whoever wins the reflection coin flip wins the duel. The Tiu mechanic becomes especially strange when both parties have 100% reflection. Theoretically, spells bounce indefinitely, though the game resolves this by having the spell eventually fizzle after multiple bounces. Understanding reflection stalemates allows counter-building. If facing reflection-heavy enemies, switch to non-spell methods like weapons or summons that ignore reflection entirely. Alternatively, use Dispel to remove enemy reflection, ending the stalemate through buff removal. The Restore Skill Permanent Training. Restore skill effects recover skills that have been damaged or drained. However, Restore skill can exceed your natural skill level temporarily if multiple restore effects are applied simultaneously. Cast multiple restore destruction spells or drink multiple restore destruction potions quickly, and your skill temporarily exceeds its natural maximum. While boosted, you can train skills beyond normal limits or perform skill check actions that require higher levels than you actually possess. The temporary overcap provides brief windows to access content designed for higher skill tiers. Cast restore effects. Interact with skill check locked content, then let the boosts expire after accessing restricted material. The mechanic allows sequence breaking or early access to late game content through temporary skill inflation. Master optimizers stock restore skill potions for specific skills they need to temporarily boost past thresholds for critical actions or quest requirements. The Fortify carry weight looting optimization. Fortify's strength increases carrying capacity proportionally, allowing you to haul more loot per delve. However, extreme Fortify strength values allow carrying thousands of pounds, effectively infinite inventory. Combined with feather effects that reduce item weight, you can loot entire dungeons completely, taking every single item regardless of value or weight. Nothing is left behind. The optimization allows maximizing profit per expedition by collecting everything, then selling systematically back in town. Alternatively, extreme carrying capacity allows transporting large numbers of potions, scrolls, soul gems, and equipment without encumbrance penalties. You become a mobile warehouse, carrying enough resources to handle any situation without returning to base. The looting optimization trades preparation time for efficiency, allowing single massive expeditions rather than multiple trips. Master looters maintain permanent Fortify strength and feather effects through enchantments, never worrying about weight management and never leaving valuables behind due to encumbrance concerns.